probably a combination of tradition and Charles's own spin on things. For example, he has selected all the music, 12 new commissions as I understand it, and I suspect some of the traditional music, I Was Glad, the traditional introit, and maybe the Crown Imperial March, which was composed for the 1937 Coronation. So I suspect that we'll see a good deal of his imprint. In 1952, Elizabeth had 8,000 people in Westminster Abbey, which meant they had to build additional stands and seating and so forth. He has reduced that number by 75%. There will be 2,000 guests at this coronation. England is a different place than it was in 1952. There'll be a multicultural dimension to this coronation. For example, one portion of the music will be sung by a gospel choir, and you know, the empire was just beginning to dissolve, with a lot of people from Commonwealth countries running to England in the late 40s and early 50s. Now that many of those people are at a third generation, the new mix in the population will have come from England's time in the European Union, when many people from Eastern Europe migrated to the United Kingdom. And so the feel of the coronation will be more multicultural, and in that respect, sensitivities, even though it's a religious ceremony in the Anglican Communion, the sensitivities toward people of other religious traditions will be pretty evident. When Cromwell's Puritan Commonwealth was established in the late 1640s, they destroyed all the old regalia. The crown, scepter, orb, all those pieces were melted down by the Puritans. And so there had to be new regalia cast for the coronation of King Charles II in 1661. But one piece of old regalia survived, and it is from the 1200s, not the 1200s, the 12th century, perhaps from the time of Richard I. And it is a spoon that is used for the anointing of the king. That'll be the oldest piece of regalia. The crown, which is known as the crown of St. Edward, will be used, but it is not the medieval crown of St. Edward, because that's part of the stuff that Cromwell destroyed, and so they had to create all new regalia. And the most important pieces of it will be the ampulla, which holds the anointing oil, the crown itself, which is called the crown of St. Edward. He'll only wear that for the main part of the ceremony. Then he will take it off and because it weighs 5 pounds, he'll put a lighter crown on for the procession back to the palace. The 2 scepters, one with a cross, one with a dove at the top, and the orb topped by a cross. All of these things will be important to the ceremony at different stages. You know, the order of the service involves the Archbishop of Canterbury presenting the king to the people for their approval. This goes back deep into medieval times, prior to the Norman conquest. And so the king is presented, and the Archbishop of Canterbury will say, "God save the king," to people on the left, people in the center, people on the right. Each time it's repeated God Save the King, and there's a flourish of trumpets. And then they proceed into the anointing and the actual coronation, for which the king will sit on the coronation chair, which dates from 1300. The Puritans didn't destroy it. I think that he has established an image of himself since his mother's funeral, which is one of staying within his mother's way of being discreet about things. You know, prior to becoming king, Charles was known to be sort of blunt about many things, and that has quieted. And so I think unless he changes direction, he's pretty much established an image of himself. And if you look at the polls about the way the English people regard the monarchy, it still has 60% approval of the English people. There are a lot of people who don't care, who'd rather see the monarchy gone, who don't want the government spending money on the monarchy and so forth. But still, a good majority of the English people approve of the monarchy. In 1902, when Edward VII, who had been waiting for so long to become king, finally had his chance. He got appendicitis on the week of the coronation, and so the ceremony had to be delayed. And it took place 2 months later, at which point all the European nobility who had come for the first scheduled coronation ceremony didn't bother coming back. And so it was sort of a disappointment in that regard. And at that point in time, getting back to the crowning, the Archbishop of Canterbury was nearly blind, and so he put the crown on backwards. And when somebody mentioned it to him, he said rather loudly, so it was heard in the church, "Go away." So there are quite a few funny stories about what happened in the course of the ceremony. For example, with Queen Victoria, the Archbishop of the ring had been cast too small, and the Archbishop of Canterbury insisted on jamming it onto her finger, which it didn't fit, so she was in quite intense pain as a consequence of this part of the ceremony. Her ceremony didn't go exactly as scheduled. One of the members of the nobility, Lord Rolle, was coming up to do homage to the new queen, and he tripped and he fell and he rolled down the stairs. There's something of a fairy tale aspect of it that, you know, just intrigues people. If they were, I mean, if Americans were asked if they wanted to have a king, the answer would be a resounding no. But for the Americans who are so fascinated with a royal house that once did rule them, it's just a matter of a part fairy tale, part soap opera, part just interest in the ceremonies and the pageantry. A friend of mine used to teach with me here said years ago that the people who do pageantry and ceremony best in the world are the English crown and the Catholic Church.